at 11-1, which is a convoluted Big Ten tie-breaking thing we don't have time to get into. But here's the bottom line. It's that they have a possibility to still get in together, Ohio State and Michigan, but I wouldn't predict it unless by some chance Clemson were to lose to South Carolina or at Notre Dame. TCU loses. The Pac-12 has a 1 or 2 loss champ. Those non-conference schedules are going to come under the microscope. And fans of both teams, Ohio State and Michigan, when the rankings come out on Tuesday, pay attention to where Penn State is ranked, because that is going to be the best win probably aside from each other on their resumes, and that will help indicate just what the selection committee thinks of Ohio State and Michigan.
Which makes this a fun question for me to ask Mr. Finebaum. Paul, how would you assess the possibility of the Big Ten getting 2 teams into the college football playoff?
Greeny, it's getting better by the hour. And a couple weeks ago, I did say that I didn't think there was much chance of it. But right now, they are both excelling. Ohio State, to me, has been the most complete team, and Michigan is the team that just simply won't go away no matter what I say or anyone else says. So I think we need to figure out this SEC mess, but really I don't think anybody in the Big Ten has any challenges between the two other than each other. Penn State, to me, just seems like a paper lion.
Well, so let me come right back to you then, Paul. Sort out the SEC mess for us. No one knows that conference, of course, better than you do. What is the likeliest way that thing shapes up when we get to the finish?
Well, I mean, if you went with the odds, Georgia and Tennessee meet next week. Georgia moves on from that game, and then Alabama has an LSU and Ole Miss back-to-back on the road task. I think that's extremely difficult. Ole Miss did Alabama a favor the other day by losing in Baton Rouge, but Alabama will be a favorite, a pretty big favorite in both games. So then we see a very likelihood of Alabama and Georgia meeting in the SEC championship game. Georgia will be favored, and if Georgia wins that game, it opens the door for Tennessee to sneak in over Alabama with 2 losses.
All right, so that would be a fascinating turn of events were it to happen. Meanwhile, Heather, you mentioned right off the top that the first rankings come out next week, understanding fully that we have an entire weekend of games between now and then. As of right now, who would be your top 4? What would be your 1 through 4 if the voting was right this minute, Heather?
Well, mine's probably different than the selection committee Greeny would have, but at number 1, I have Ohio State. I'm glad that Paul has finally copied off my paper and joined the club. Number 2, I have Georgia. Number 3, Tennessee. And number 4, quack, I've got the Ducks. And the reason I have Oregon there is because Paul nailed it. Penn State, paper lion. I love that description of it. I don't think that Michigan's win against Penn State is that great. I think Oregon's win against UCLA is better. They've won 6 straight since losing to Georgia.
Wow. So the 1-loss Ducks in ahead of the Wolverines. Paul, who would be your top 4 right now?
Yeah, and I would be sitting next to Heather in 11th grade copying off her paper because she would be far smarter than I am. I agree with everything she said except the Quackers. At last check, Oregon lost to Georgia by 46 points. If the committee wants to have enough bravery to overcome all that, I'm going with Michigan, even though it's probably going to kill me in the end.
I would describe this as one of the great upsets of the college football season. Paul Finebaum has Michigan in the top 4, and Heather does not. That's not what I saw coming. Struggles in the fourth quarter have been part of the storyline of the season as the Ravens prepare for a Thursday nighter against the Bucs. Our Rex Ryan said right here on this show on Monday what he thinks he's seeing in Lamar late in these games and why it's happening. Give a listen.
I think he's pressing. And I see it. This is not the same guy we see, in the first 3 quarters of the game. And part of it is it's the contract. Like, I'm just telling you, how could it not be? When he walked away from X amount of dollars, whatever it was, but he looks to me like that something's just not right. And to me, it's weighing on this guy.
So that was Rex here. As he was talking, I saw both of you at this end of the table sort of shaking your heads in disagreement. Why?
It's not the contract, G. It's the defense. The Baltimore Ravens defense is really bad in the fourth quarter. They're allowing on average 10 points and 123 yards of offense, both of which are the worst in the National Football League. So when we start talking about Lamar Jackson pressing, yeah, he's pressing because he knows he has to overcome a suspect defense. The other thing that he has to overcome is not having the benefit of an offensive line that can close out games by running the football. The Baltimore Ravens are 16th in run block win rate in the fourth quarter. Now, for context, from 2018 through 2021, the Baltimore Ravens offensive line in the fourth quarter, second in run block win rate. So those are the two issues that are exacerbating the problem in the production or lack thereof that we're seeing from Lamar Jackson. Let's not blame this on the contract. These aren't excuses. There are reasons as to why we're not seeing Lamar Jackson play MVP football in clutch time.
Chris, Lamar Jackson just isn't playing well. He's 25th in the league in completion percentage, and he's 25th in off-target throws. So he's human. I agree with Rex from a standpoint, it's human nature that a consequential deal of generational wealth doesn't get done. And statistically, when you watch him, he's not the same guy right now. I agree, they're blowing fourth quarter leads. The defense can't end games the way they used to. They don't have a running back. Hopefully they're going to address that. But he's just not playing as well as he once was. Now, look, if I'm the Ravens, do I still sign him? Of course I do. But right now, he's just not the same player.
The hard part with me accepting this idea as a contract is Rex said it himself. He's good for the first 3 quarters. He was great for the first several games of the season.
Right.
Does he forget about the contract?
Then,
He forgets about the contract for 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, they must put something up on the Jumbotron. Say, remember, Lamar, his contract's not signed yet. Then he's like, oh, I forgot. Interception. I actually think that is more schematic issues and it's part connected to that defense. I think they're so committed to this big personnel in part because they want to run the clock, they want to run the ball, that they put Lamar in a tough situation. When you're blitzing him, the way you scare teams out of blitzing you is with big plays.
Yep.
It's hard to create big plays when you got guys with number 40s, numbers or with numbers in the 40s and tight ends out there so you can run. Like you need to crack somebody over the head with a big 50-yard gain and then they'll stop blitzing Lamar. I think that's a bigger problem, but they're scared to be that aggressive because they could end up in 3 and outs, which puts the defense back on the field. That's the conundrum. It's not the contract.
Number one, if I'm Lamar, I'd be pressing too. But not because of the contract. It's because when you think about the injuries that they've suffered at key positions, like his number 1 running back didn't start the season healthy. His left tackle didn't start the season healthy. Rashad Bateman has missed several games. Without Rashad Bateman in the lineup, this whole offense looks completely different. And at the start of the season, it was Lamar. Lamar was almost like, screw it, I'll do it myself. Like that's sort of been how he's had to play, and it worked in the beginning, and now it's not. Like they have the worst point differential in the fourth quarter of any team in the NFL. It's not the contract. Like this guy puts more pressure on himself than anybody on the outside. So I don't think it's the contract. It really is real fundamental issues with this.
The other thing about the contract is he's going to get one. There are no circumstances under which the Ravens are going to say, you know, maybe we're better off with that. He's going to be within a yacht of Deshaun Watson money regardless, right? Whether he gets 170 guaranteed, 190 guaranteed. So there's going to be generational money there regardless of the outcome, right?
I'll push back on that. Over 20 years, some players can handle it better than others. Like, that's very logical. We're not inside his mind. And look, he's a great competitor. He deserves to get a deal done. I thought it was going to get done. And at some point, it has to impact him because when you watch him play, he's just not playing as well as he once did earlier in the season.
Well, listen, he's 5th in QBR and he's top 5 in rushing. So we say he's not playing well. The team is not having the results that we expect. But you can't look at those metrics and say Lamar Jackson isn't a really, really good quarterback.
Right.
And that's my problem with all of the criticism that we're heaping on top of him. The context of the situation matters. Not having a running game in the fourth quarter and having a suspect defense makes the issues that Lamar Jackson has to overcome that much more of a problem.
Let's bookmark this one. This is an interesting conversation because I sort of see both sides. We'll come back to it as we continue. Meantime, we have a huge weekend of college games. Let's take a close look at those, shall we? It starts in Happy Valley. Number 2, Ohio State taking on Penn State. The Buckeyes on a roll right now, having scored at least 49 points in each of their 4 conference games this season. Then 7 Eastern on ESPN, we have an SEC border rivalry, Kentucky and number 3 Tennessee. First time since 1951 that both these teams are ranked when they meet. And then primetime Saturday night on ABC, the great interstate rivalry in-state between Michigan and Michigan State. Wolverines have lost their last 2 and 10 of the last 14. And obviously this is a monster game for the unbeaten Wolverines to keep it going. And there they are. Heather and Paul are back with us. As always, when we need college football insight, this is where we turn. Let's talk first and foremost, Heather, about the Big Two in the Big Ten. Ohio State, big game. Michigan, big game. Are these teams on a collision course to meet undefeated at the end of the season?
Yes, they are. If they are top 4 quality teams, which they appear to be, there's absolutely no reason that they should lose before they meet in the regular season finale. If by some chance Penn State were to pull off a miracle, there's a possibility that they could all